right. Marilee Rusiniak, and I've been with the Kirk Players for 10 years now. And one of the first crew assignments I had with the Kirk Players was running the soundboard at the Cuneo for Dial M for Murder. That was a long show, and I believe that was Brian Matika was our designer, and there were about 5 of us that were running sound for the various shows that we had. And I ended up building a book very much like a stage manager or assistant stage manager's book, because that's where my background is in. So, sound designer. What does a sound designer do? You plan, and in many cases, you deliver the sound effects in a play. And it can also be music. Sound effects might be things like thunder, telephone ringing, a crazy Pomeranian, or a dying cat. Yes, I have done both the crazy Pomeranian and the dying cat. You might also be providing music for certain scenes, and also running microphones and speakers. Now, some theaters do have a sound designer, and they'll break it into other jobs also. You'll have a designer, that's all they'll do is the design, but they'll have other people, the crew, who will be the delivery or the engineer. KP, we tend to have one person do all of it, but for some reason, we don't have many people who design sound with KP, and I don't know why. This is probably one of my absolute favorite things to do, because you get to be creative, have fun, and honestly, it's kind of a way to get involved in an area, and it's not intimidating at all. Well, actually, I'm going to amend that. It's a little intimidating right now because we have a fairly new board, and I believe I'm probably the only sound designer we have that hasn't yet run on the new board. I know Martin has had many chances. I think James has. And I'm looking forward to possibly having a class where we can have people who know our new board run it. But I love the design aspect of sound. So designing and delivering sound is usually one and the same job for Kirk Player people. That is also going to include setting up your mics and your speakers, and we are working with the actual board and not just running through it. It's going to include programming and running the board, the equipment. Again, KP, we're usually all one and the same. So what do you do first? Well, what Chuck said, Susie said, Fran said, read the script. Read the script and then read it again. Go to the read-through. Now for KP, at the read-through, usually the sound designer will come and they will record it. And then as a courtesy, provide a recording to the actors to help them learn their lines. This is not typical. This is something that KP does, and I think it's absolutely wonderful. As an actor, I love having a recording of the script to help me learn my lines, but it's not necessary. So read and study the script. Some scripts have lists in there that actually list out exactly each and every single sound effect. In fact, in I think it was Mousetrap, we had a music and sound plot. And it's probably all backwards from the way you're seeing it. And it lists everything, every single sound effect and the music and every single page and what happened in the script. So the designer didn't have to go through it and discover it for themselves, although every designer should do that for themselves. So you go through, you identify everything. And then it is imperative to work with your director to find out what is their idea of sound for the show. Sometimes they have absolutely specific ideas. The best example I could think of recently was Peter had very specific ideas for Actor's Nightmare. He knew exactly what songs in what order that they were going to go. So that was part of his vision. And as a sound designer, it is your job to make that vision happen. So you have to work very closely with your director, get an idea of where they're going. I've worked sound design for both Les and Kat, and both of them are more, they let the designer go ahead and make the choices and the decisions. And then we bring our choices and decisions to the director and say, here, this is what I've come up with. What do you think? And they go, oh, I really like that. That sounds good. Or, you know what, that's not quite what I'm looking for. Let's try this, that, or the other thing. So after you've read the script, you need to develop what is your vision of the script, the story, what you're looking at, and how does that work with the director. Looking at my notes, give me a moment. So with sound, if it's done correctly, you're not going to know. You're not going to know it was done correctly because it was done correctly. When a cue is blown, something is set at the wrong level, you miss a cue, it can take the audience member and the actors out of the performance. So it's very important for that designer and person who's doing the delivery of the sound to be 100% in the show. You can't be sitting and scrolling on your cell phone. You have got to pay attention, and you've got to be working with your assistant stage manager and your stage manager. Now, a lot of theaters will have their stage manager or assistant stage manager actually calling the cues from the script, saying, you know, sound cue 1, sound cue 2, go. It depends on the director and the stage manager that you're working for. Some designers and delivery people like to do it visually. Sometimes it works better visually, but it's important at the very beginning that your designer and person who's going to be running sound works with the stage manager and the assistant stage manager and the director to get the best result, because sometimes it can be really hard for the stage manager or the assistant stage manager to have the right sight line to see what's going to happen. So again, you got to talk it out. You got to figure it out, and don't guess. Never make guesses at it. Figure it out. When you've got your script, you heard Chuck and both Fran and Susie talk about their costume plot, their light plot, their props plot. You should also always have a sound plot where you figure out what your sound is, what page it's going to be on, how is it going to be delivered, what speaker, and what level is it going to come out to. It is so important as a designer when we're in that tech week to set your levels, because you got to figure out, okay, how loud does the dying cat have to be? How soft should the music be? And now that I just thought about it when I was talking about music, certain shows have different requirements for different sound. Now, almost every single one of them will have some kind of sound effect, a telephone ring. Maybe it's a live sound effect like a door knock, which might be something that the stage manager is going to do. Is the actor going to do it, or is it going to be something that's pre-recorded, or is it going to be something delivered live? That's something that has to be figured out and written down. Sometimes we're going to use music to set a mood. Sound can help set moods, give an idea of what time of year it is, what time of day the action is. Like maybe it's, you hear the tweeting of the birds in the morning to indicate that it's a beautiful morning in the summer, or you're hearing that thunderstorm going on. One of my favorite stories was during The Uninvited. During our final dress rehearsal, there was a massive thunderstorm going on, actually outside. And we had the scene with the seance, and the ghost shows up, and there is thunder and lightning crashing and going, and the lights are flashing on and off. And then we get to notes, and Les says, James, that was perfect. Although I think it was getting to be just a little bit too much. I don't want you to go too far with it. Let's pull it back a little bit. And he goes, that wasn't me. Most of that was actually Mother Nature providing the sound effects. So James was able to take what he had already designed for that scene and build upon it, because, you know, Les had said, that's what I want. So again, that brings us back to the fact that the sound designer's job is to work with our director and make that vision happen. When a director says, bring it down, you bring it down. When a director says, I want more, you bring it more. When a director says, I don't like the way that song doesn't work for me, I don't like that, you find something else. You work with them. You're helping make his or her vision complete. So that was sound effects, thunder, lightning, crash. Sometimes we might have music or a score or something underneath. For Becky's new car, when I did sound for that, I worked with Kat. Yeah, it was Kat and Gretchen. And you guys let me put dinner music underneath the cocktail party hour. So I had some nice kind of smooth jazz going, and they got the little flirtation happening, and it just kind of helped enhance the scene. But it wasn't noticeable. You weren't listening to the music. You were watching the scene. It was an enhancement. You weren't there for the sound. You were there for Becky's new car and the story. When I worked on The Mousetrap, that was interesting because the publisher, who was Samuel French, actually offered a pre-recorded CD of the sound effects. When you're a designer, you get to go out and you get to find the sound effects. That's part of my absolute favorite part of being a designer. I love going out and looking for things, going on the internet, trying to find it, or even create a sound effect. For The Mousetrap, there was a CD that was available. And I remember going to Kat and saying, hey, Kat, I would really like to purchase this CD. And I think it was like 20 bucks or something like that. And we grabbed that CD, we purchased it, and we used that for all the pre-recorded sound effects that were needed, but we still had to get together some music. So to help set the scene, the mood, I went through tons and tons of CDs, went to the library, checked stuff out, and I actually ended up using the score from a movie called The Right with Anthony Hopkins, and it's an exorcist type movie. And it kind of had a dark, foreboding, kind of really creepy, scary music, but it was not well known. He's not the most recognized composer out there for scores, and you didn't recognize that music, you know. You wouldn't go, oh yeah, that's his music from The Right, and it was kind of obscure, but it set the right tone. So the music, the sound effect, the design helped set that dark, foreboding, kind of creepy feeling that we had for The Mousetrap, this murder mystery. But it wasn't, you weren't there to listen to the music. And sound can also be used to help establish characters. I know when we were working on 37 postcards, we had an exercise where the actors were asked to bring in some songs that they felt were their characters. So each one brought in at least 5 songs. Maybe it was a song that they felt was a good description of them, or something that maybe they listened to. So when the director was working, Mary Jo was working with the actors on that, I asked everybody to go ahead, give me your songs. And then I incorporated that into the pre-show and intermission and after-show music. The designer, if you're working in a theater that has pre-show and intermission music, you can use these skills and working with your script, your director's vision to help set the mood both before, in the middle of the show at intermission, and then afterwards to help direct how it's going to go. But again, people aren't there for a concert, or, well, I mean, maybe they, they are for the music, for the musical, Hamilton. But if sound is done right, it's not going to be noticeable. What else? Oh, and there's obviously the technical side of sound design: mics, speakers, and levels. And when we did the musical patent leather shoes, that was a very different, that was something. That was a very different experience because we had a stage full of stage mics, which, as you know, with KP, we don't mic our actors. So we're not constantly working with different levels that people have of body mics, and that is a whole other creature. I remember James and I were tearing out our hair at points trying to find the right levels between the orchestra and the singers and sound effects, and it really was a dance where both James and I each had, you know, one hand on different levels and different mics, and we're muting this person because they're just maybe a little bit too strong, and okay, or we got to bring them down just a little bit, or we got to bring this person up, and then we got to turn off the house mics here because they're dancing over them practically, or right under them, and it's a challenge. It's a challenge, but again, it goes right back to knowing your script, going to rehearsals early and often, working with your technical director and your director to know what their vision is and how are you going to support that vision. Of course, it's good to have technical experience. I don't have that. That's where I am a little bit lacking in sound design. I know Martin, and Dom and James and some of our other designers, they have the technical side of it where they're able to look at the board, make different changes on a technical side, and if something happens, they're able to jump in. Jeff, I know you've done that for us too. That is important, and that is something that I would like, you know, to see current players become a little bit more robust in, and everybody knowing the board and how to address technical issues. Because as a designer, you should know and be able to fix mics, fix levels. I know we've seen Martin back there with the back of the soundboard open and getting things hooked up that weren't hooked up correctly. And that's part of a sound designer's job too, is handling mics and speakers and headsets. Usually the sound designer will pull the headsets, make sure that batteries are charged at the end of the night, and set them for the people that need them. So that is a broad overview of sound design.
Awesome. Thank you.
Good job.
Well done.
Marilee, we have one
Very
question.
nice, Marilee.
Yes.
One question for you. Is there any type of simple manual or YouTube training that for the new soundboard, something to help us learn to run the sound system?
God, I wish.
Yeah, I would say that and I can speak to that because I've been a part of that. We've actually had trainers come in to train us on the board. So
oh man, that would have been awesome to get some KP peers in there so that we can get more people. It's difficult for us to get people to run the soundboard. Sometimes people pull double duty all the time. You get someone that's in the cast that is also doing the designer, and then we got to find somebody that's willing to run the board. It's not hard. It really isn't. Once you do it, you're going to love it. It's very creative, it's fun, and it's not that hard, and I wish more people would do it.
Well, Randy Marcus can speak to that because he stepped in when we needed a sound person and did an amazing job.